Hello, friends, and welcome to What the Fringe, the podcast dedicated to all things Fringe theater. I'm your host, Lauren Hance. Each week, I visit with a Fringe artist to hear all about their endeavors and gain insight into their process. This week, I'm visiting with the duo Xhloe Rice and Natasha Roland of A Letter to Lyndon B. Johnson or God, Whoever Reads This First. Boyhood is all about spit shakes, rope swings, and playing soldiers, but only the good guys, of course. Whether it's stories around the campfire, pranks on their superior, or a prayer to their favorite president, these two scouts just want their moms to see the big, strong men they've become. A Letter to Lyndon B. Johnson or God, Whoever Reads This First, is an absurdist two-hander that blurs the lines of 1960s American Boy Scouts and drafted U.S. soldiers in Vietnam, using clowning, physical theater, and themes of nostalgia, religion, and masculinity. Written and performed by the three-time consecutive Fringe First Award winners for new writing, Xhloe Rice and Natasha Roland.
The other thing is that good work does speak for itself. And obviously with the saturation of Fringe, of good work, there is some of the best stuff you will ever see in your life at Edinburgh Fringe. And some stuff that's definitely not for you, and they're equally fun to see while you're there. But with the saturation of good work, you have to trust in like the value of your work, because there's also a lot of politics at Fringe and a lot of hierarchies at Fringe, whether it's the venue you're at or how much money you put into marketing, or whether you flyer personally or you hire a flyer, or if you talk to your audience after or you don't. All the bells and whistles are great, and some of them help, and you'll learn what works best for your show and you as an artist.
Xhloe and Natasha are a New York-based, multidisciplinary devising, writing, performing duo that have been in collaboration for over a decade, creating absurdist clown physical theater inspired by archetypes of Americana. They are known for creating work that is highly physical, fast-paced, historically influenced, and genre-defying. Xhloe and Natasha are three-time consecutive recipients of the prestigious Edinburgh Fringe Festival Fringe First Award for Outstanding New Writing. Their show, A Letter to Lyndon B. Johnson or God, Whoever Reads This First, was the recipient of the Soho Playhouse Encore Series Prize, as well as the Broadway Baby Bobby Award for Excellence. Recently, they were awarded an Offie, Off West End Award for Best Performance, and have been called the most promising young theater makers to emerge from Edinburgh Fringe in recent years by Everything Theatre, and the buzziest Fringe theater makers of the 2020s by the Telegraph. Xhloe and Natasha!
I love to hear it.
I know, I was just like, there's nothing else to say, actually. I don't want to ruin that.
I think we're done here.
Oh, well, I am so glad that you all are here. So we got connected because last year you applied for World Fringe Day for that podcast and you submitted. So then I started following you and I was like, oh my gosh, I have to have these Fringers on the podcast. So I've been jonesing to have you on. And for those that don't know if we sound different or if you're watching on YouTube, it looks a little different because they came to Texas. And so, yeehaw. And I rolled out the big Texas carpet for them. I met them in Austin. And so we get to record in person. So my first time to record in person. So I'm just super excited that you guys are here.
We're so excited to be here.
This is so cool.
I know, we've been hanging out, so it's been really fun. And we've been talking all things Fringe. So let's talk all things Fringe.
Let's get into it.
So you guys are like physical theater performers and clowning. How did you find that like as your niche? Because I know you both studied theater, and U.S. theaters don't really teach a lot of that kind of like devised work unless you go to a specialized school. So how did you come upon this as your genre?
Well, we've always been movers. Like we both have a dance background, and so that's always been like an influence in our work. But we both studied clown in school. I studied clown in Italy, and that was the first time I really experienced it. Like it was a place called Accademia dell'Arte, and I studied clown for a month, and I remember being like, oh my God, there's a name for the thing that I've been doing, actually.
I didn't invent it.
All these things I thought I invented, and I'm like crushed.
But on the flip side, it gave us like this amazing toolkit for language to describe kind of things that we were already drawn to, specifically with like studying commedia and learning about like these archetypes, especially because for us, clown in our work and the way it manifests has a lot to do with like exaggeration. And so it became this way that we always loved kind of being slapstick and like falling all over each other. We got really good and also really injured, multiple times. We started learning the like safe and really efficient ways and kind of being able to point to like the historical influences and the clown influences took our work even further. So beyond the like philosophical demise of thinking that we invented it, we kind of like to say that we were always clowns, and then we learned kind of what clowning was, and we got to have like the language for it, and it just like propelled it further. So it was accidental clowning.
That you did not invent. I love that. Let's get into Fringe. What is this? Like, what inspired you to do that?
Well, we had been producing and performing in New York for a really long time, but it's an incredibly saturated and competitive environment to create art within. And so it was really hard to get attention from anyone. And like, even though we'd been doing it for 6 or 7 years, we'd never been able to get a reviewer into one of our original works or our shows.
It was a lot of friends who were loving it, and shout out to all those friends who, you know, came every night or like came to every production and gave us such great feedback and loved the shows and gave us that like push to keep going. But we were reaching a point where we knew that if we could get it to a wider audience, that it would resonate with those people as well. We would find a wider audience to it if we could just get it in front of them. And we lacked kind of the funds and the connections to make that happen. And so kind of naively, we were just like, oh, well, we know about the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. We both studied theater and theater history, and like you can't skip the Edinburgh Fringe in the context of like world theater. And so we were like, oh, let's just do that. Like the world's biggest festival with no experience ever producing outside of New York City, ever producing at a festival, ever like
Being in Scotland.
I had never left the east coast of the US when we just decided to like pack a duffel bag full of props and go to Scotland.
But it was really like following that feeling in our heart that was just like, I just know that if other people can see this, that they'll get it. And it was very possible that it wouldn't go that way.
We were hoping that there was an audience somewhere at like an artistic marketplace like that. We were like, the most eyes on it as possible gives us the best luck at like finding those people that'll latch onto the show. Yeah. And part of that is luck.
You found that person. Someone from the Scotsman came to one of your first few shows, and you got this really prestigious award for writing, and that has kind of like catapulted you. Like, how has that changed your career, really?
It's been crazy. I think it was really a catalyst for people to just start listening to us. Because it's not like we're saying anything different. Like we're pitching ourselves the same way. And we're pitching the shows that we know that we have. But people with the recognition, that kind of high recognition, people started to really listen.
And take us seriously. Yeah. It's unfortunate, but it's true that like a little bit of that notoriety, it did go a long way. And that does go a long way at Fringe. It was insane that we got the award, it was like announced at 10 a.m. and by noon, the rest of our Fringe run was sold out. We were only there for a week. We were trying to extend it. We extended a couple days, but then we really had to fly back to the US because we were broke. But that truly was the like starting point. It was the thing that made it possible for us to return to Fringe the next year, which then started this domino effect. It's made it so that we've been able to start performing other places in the UK, and we kind of have a theatrical home and an audience in London now, which is crazy to even think about. But other places in the world, everywhere that we've traveled, you can kind of trace its lineage back to Fringe, that someone saw us at Fringe. The reason we're here in Texas is because someone saw us at Fringe. We're headed to Korea soon, and it's because someone saw us at Fringe.
Well, and then how has that changed? Like, if you go from New York City, which is like the biggest theater city in the world, I mean, London's really close as well. You go from being like really well known. I know I've seen some of your things on social media where people stay for like 2 hours after the show. And you were saying people like want to take pictures with you. And then you go back to New York City and they're like, get out of the way.
It's a great ego check.
There is nothing more humbling than going from being like a superstar famous to back to my day job where I'm like teaching kids how to ride bikes and things like that. And the kids are like asking me if they can go to the bathroom, and I'm like, I have a Fringe first. I don't know. I don't know why I'm here actually at all.
It's so special the way that we found the audience in Scotland, and it's still so cool when we pinch ourselves that people, they buy our merch and they ask for autographs and they really just want to like talk and connect with us, and that is so cool. But it's such a unique experience that it's only for 1 month out of the year in one city in Scotland, and that anywhere else it's definitely still a grind. I was definitely emphasizing the way that the Fringe First has helped us, but it doesn't do all the work, and we definitely are still like having to claw, especially in a city like New York, to still make ourselves stand out and to get people to take us seriously, because also stuff about UK theater culture and Fringe theater culture doesn't always translate to New York, and sometimes people don't quite know even what the significance of Edinburgh Fringe, especially not the significance of the award or how we've gotten it multiple times. It just doesn't necessarily mean much. So we know it's not over the hurdle of like proving ourselves, but it's good. It's good to stay humble.
We had to leave America for people in America to start listening to us. It feels like we had to kind of gain a following in a completely different country in order to get people in our home city to listen.
It was really after our second year that we started getting emails from people in the US and specifically New York being like, I hear people in the UK are talking about you. Why don't I know who you are? And I was like, is that what it takes for people to get like FOMO, to be watching from across the pond, you know?
You're like, I've been sending you press releases.
Yeah. I'm like, check your inbox, actually. I'll tell you exactly where we were.
Well, and it's been great because like you've got the Fringe Encore series at the Soho, which they do such great work of like highlighting Fringe artists and giving Fringe artists opportunity.
We just did the Encore series, which is kind of all fringy work from all over the world, not just Edinburgh Fringe. And we did a letter to LBJ for an off-Broadway run there. And we will be there in the future, I should say.
Awesome.
You'll see us back at Soho Playhouse. We had a great time there.
Darren, who runs Soho Playhouse, is just like an incredible person that just really believes in us and has let us know that. And it's just having someone in your corner like that has been really awesome.
And again, as someone who saw us at Fringe.
It is so funny. He stood behind my parents in line for our show, and Darren starts speaking to them. And it was just so funny because afterwards, he like fell in love with them.
They just were being doting parents, and he loved it, so they got to chatting. But then her mom comes up into the theater.
Yeah, afterwards my mom came up, she was like, we just met Darren from Soho Playhouse. And I was like,
What did you say to him?
I was like, what did you do? I was like, what do you mean you just met him? So it was crazy. But that's like, he came that night, and it's been a great relationship, and we love that theater. It's been amazing.
They give such great opportunities to artists, just not only in New York, but everywhere. So I'm so excited that you guys have been able to build that relationship with them there, and that's so exciting. Well, let's talk a little bit about these shows. Okay, so you've done 3 shows at Edinburgh Fringe. All 3 of them have won a Scotsman Fringe First, which is for playwriting, for like kind of like a premiere of a show. For people that don't know, it's a really big deal. It's a really big deal to get one. It's very hard to get one. Y'all jokers got 3 and 3 in a row for these shows, which is so cool. So tell me a little bit about the themes of the shows. So and then The Rodeo Burned Down. That was your first show that you told us about earlier. And then you've got What If They Ate the Baby? And then you've got A Letter to Lyndon B. Johnson, or whoever reads this first. So give us a quick overview of the themes.
Okay, Speed Run. And then The Rodeo Burned Down is the story of a rodeo clown that wants desperately to be a cowboy. But one day his shadow comes along. It's another clown that looks exactly like him and kind of throws a wrench in the works of his kind of plan of upward mobility at the rodeo. But without spoiling anything, the story kind of fractures into the tale of clowns kind of trying to solve the mystery of the show and afford an ending. So it's themes of self-love, anti-capitalism, masculinity, and like toxic masculinity, and especially the way that relates to capitalism. But it's also just like a good time with Elvis and Johnny Cash and cowboy boots and hats and lots of different characters and character switching and meta theater.
It's always absurd. It's always clown. Like all of our works were across the board absurd, clown, and very physical.
Next, What If They Ate the Baby?
Yeah, What If They Ate the Baby follows 2 neighboring housewives, and it's very Groundhog Day cyclical. You're seeing the same situation over and over again, but in different ways.
It's the story of like a neighbor returning a dish through all the like 1950s niceties. It's these 2 housewives. You don't get to see anything but their kitchen. You don't get to see anything but this interaction, but you see it over and over again with a bunch of different contexts. It hits on like themes of surveillance and bodily autonomy and niceties, what you present versus what you're hiding, especially in the context of like McCarthyism in the US and paranoia, all through the lens of these like 2 perfectly hyper feminine, really made up housewives that are desperately trying to be polite while also competing but possibly romancing each other.
We like to say it's like if you were listening to the scene through the walls, like all the different possibilities that could be going on.
Kind of Stepford Wives meets The Twilight Zone meets Groundhog Day meets Ionesco.
So brilliant. Oh my gosh. And then we've got our newest show, Lyndon B. Johnson.
Yeah. So, full title, buckle in. A Letter to Lyndon B. Johnson, or God, whoever reads this first, is a story that blurs the lines between Boy Scouts and drafted soldiers. And so you follow these 2 friends who are scouts, and it becomes ambiguous whether they're playing as soldiers, as young boys do, or if they are soldiers drafted to Vietnam, kind of reminiscing about being children. So it covers the themes of like military service, masculinity, the kind of mythic American boyhood that were sold in a lot of popular culture, the way that kind of the myth of the good old days and how everything was good, especially if you just were a young boy that could go climb fences and scrape your knees, and kind of how insidious that is, like how that can kind of leak into something that normalizes violence and war, and even the ways in which Scouting as an institution prepares young people for military service, and how that's so normalized in the context of like the American war machine. But it's also funny and clowny.
It is funny, yeah.
It's funny, but it's like, I think as funny as it is, it's also like deeply tragic as well. It talks a lot about toxic nationalism or toxic patriotism, and yeah, the ways that like is infused into childhood in America and the ways it affects it. But also like it's so much about friendship and connection and the importance of that, of a brotherhood in some way.
What draws you to write about male stories, very female, like they're like each show is very centered around kind of these kind of gendered ideas, if you will. What draws you to that kind of storytelling in those stories?
We're both so fascinated with the way that you can manipulate like and push the boundary of the suspension of disbelief in theater and only in theater, that obviously gender bending goes beyond the art of theater, and obviously there's overlap with drag and burlesque and like stuff like that. But we think something so fascinating about theater and being a theater artist is like we can walk out on stage and tell the audience we're two 8-year-old boys, and they'll believe us. And if we do the work right, they will believe us. In the same way that if we walk out in our petticoats with our bright red lipstick on and we say, okay, now we're women, we're mothers, we're housewives, whatever, because it's something that is through the lens of clown so exaggerated, it causes audiences to like really engage with their own concept of like gender or gender presentation or presentation of masculinity in the way that it like relates to their lives, calling out their own biases and stuff. It works so well in theater because everything in theater is put on and it's intentional. That it's something that we love is kind of the ambiguity and like the freedom that we have to like express ourselves and express our experiences with it,
and to like write without the boundaries of like having to think about like our identities and obviously we can like think about like the way we look and the way people will see us and everything, but as writers having that freedom and that ambiguity it makes it more fun.
We think that everybody like has an experience of gender regardless of what that is. Like everyone has those things that like affirm the way they feel in their identity or don't, or they have a relationship to masculinity. No matter who you are, you have a relationship to masculinity and to femininity. And it's a fascinating thing to play with.
And it's interesting, like we have people come up to us after the show who are like, I thought you were little boys for real. And then we have people come up to us after the show. It's true.
Where they're like, I like forgot while watching that you weren't.
Oh, I forgot. Oh, okay. Yeah.
They're like, I forgot. Yeah, you are children. But also we have people come up to us after that are just like, why were you playing boys? It's funny because I don't take anything personally. I'm like, it's just speaking to you and like your perspective and like the way that you've been conditioned. And it's interesting. I think everybody takes something away from it.
And they read something into it, because some people will come up to us and go, I think it's so fascinating. It has to be you guys or people that look like you guys playing these young boys, because it calls into question why that's happening and it makes me think about masculinity. Whereas we had somebody come up to us here in Austin and go, oh my gosh, imagine this play with like two burly men. And so it's like everyone has their own perspective on it, but we use kind of our bodies and how we present to force them to think about that.
And our work, we always say leans ambiguous, like on a scale of complete like gobbledygook nothing and spoon feeding the audience. We lean just slightly towards the gobbledygook, like all off the middle, off center. And I think that both in the way like we like to hold the audience accountable, but also like because audiences are smart and they can connect dots by themselves and they can like insert their own narratives into things. We don't like to spoon feed them. And so I think that just gender in general like fits into that equation where it's just like it's ambiguous.
That we don't need to spoon feed you information about gender or gender theory or anything like that for you to glean something from the way that people interact with other people in the world. It's a social thing.
You do it so beautifully. I'm going to get to see it live tonight. I'm so excited. But I did, before the podcast, I wanted to see it. So I watched a video version of it, which I hate. So I'm going to put it out of my brain and come with like fresh. I've never seen the show before. But I thought it wasn't caricature-y. Like it was so beautiful and so honest. I thought what I would think young boys like how they would react and as boys go to war and what they think about when they were younger. There was just something really beautiful about it. Do you have any idea kind of like how you tap into that of speaking that truth without becoming caricature-y? Even though you're freaking clowns, that doesn't matter because it was, and even through the video it came through, it was so honest. Like, how do you think you tap into that?
Well, I think when because we directed it as well, and so when we brought it into the space, we had that conversation because we knew we were playing young boys. We were like, I've seen it. I've seen like the adults play young boys and they put on like this very specific voice and very specific body language, and we were like, that is what we don't want. And I think it's so much about the friendship between these characters, and that's part of what makes it really honest. But we worked against going to that character on purpose.
It's also a huge theme in the show to call into question how much of their masculinity is like manufactured versus like innate. One of the jumping off points of the show was us talking about the way that young boys are quite androgynous by nature, and a lot of the things that we associate with boyhood usually is something that comes after puberty or kind of when you come closer to adulthood, that those things that, you know, we did as young girls, like holding hands with your friends and hugging your friends and crying in front of your friends, and those things that maybe are associated with like girliness or femininity, I think they come natural to all humans, and there are certain aspects of it that just socially kind of get, for lack of a better word, and sometimes literally beaten out of young men. And that's kind of what the show is about, because you see the two perspectives. You see the boys and you see the men, and the differences in that, the line of when you cross that line between being a boy and being a man, and what are the rules of each. And especially because children are the best vessel to view how something can be impressed upon a person as opposed to like their own opinions. You know, we think of like ourselves as kids, and we talk a lot when we were devising this about like silly things that we believed as a child, whether it's like being like sucked down the bathtub drain or whatever. It's like, who puts that in your head that can happen? So children are a great device, or the context of the perspective of children are a great device for true sincerity, because they're not putting on kind of social airs in the way that adults do.
And I think that also it's just like that's part of why the clowning is beautiful, because so much of clown is about play. And like we teach clowning workshops to kids all the time. And the way that the difference between a clowning workshop with adults and kids is like with adults, you got to do the work to get them to just like let it go, like drop it. It's like, you're okay. You can like do it. And kids, I'm just like, now there's a tiger in the room. And the kids are like, now there's a tiger in the room. And so it's like, I think tapping into that inner child and like in clown is so much a part of that honesty.
It's more sincere rather than caricature. It's like, even though clowning is so much about exaggeration, it's also about like sincerity and a sense of play, which is kind of what we're all born with it. And a lot of clown training is like, how do you get that back? Get the courage to get that back, or the freedom to get that back.
And it takes work. You tell an adult like there's a tiger in the room, they'll be like,
give me some details.
How big is it?
What's the tiger's motivations in the scene, actually?
And even if you don't say it, you do it. And I catch ourselves doing it. Like, everyone's guilty of it. We just you get too many thoughts and fears and too much armor on yourself when you become an adult. Because you have to.
Well, it's executed beautifully, and I can't wait to see the other shows to see how beautifully those are executed as well. So you mentioned a moment ago that you don't have a director, which I find very interesting, but you do also have a lighting designer, so I want to get into that because you do have some collaboration. And as you said from the beginning, you were bringing lights and sounds. So this is something that you've been doing for a long time. How does your process work, and then what happens when you brought your technician in, because the lighting is, and the music and the cues are so much like another character in the show?
It definitely is a mixed bag. When it comes to the other design, we obviously, so stuff like costume design and sound design, and I like to say stage design rather than set design. We don't work with kind of permanent sets very often.
Right.
That is something that we have, because we do it ourselves, we have the privilege of it being devised along with the show and can change along with the show, rather than kind of a traditional process where a designer would come in later. But then when it comes to lights, huge shout out to Xhloe Rice Natash Roland. He's our lighting designer. He's also our technical director and a catch-all for a ton of things that we can't do. And when we met him, we convinced him to come to Edinburgh. He had never worked with us. He had never met us for more than 5 minutes. And we said, will you fly across the country and stay in an underground hostel in Edinburgh and do the show on the fly that you've never seen before?
Your own plane ticket.
Oh my gosh.
So shout out to him. He took a huge chance on us, but it really was like a creative match made in heaven, because he then has the disadvantage of not having that. He comes in late. The show kind of already exists when he comes in, and he just is an excellent collaborator. He's an excellent designer, but an excellent collaborator with us and our vision, and has his finger on the pulse of storytelling. And he's also super creative, because when you're working at Fringes, you're going from space to space. You're not always working with a huge rig with loads of lights and everything that you want. You can't always build or design the rig. A lot of times you're kind of working with 2 hours, sometimes less, of programming, and not to mention that then we load onto him a ton of sound cues that then he has to play while he does it. And so the process with Xhloe, especially as we've now worked with him on all of our Fringe shows, has just gotten more and more integrated into our creative process. A lot of shows travel with a technician just so that they don't have to retrain someone to hit the buttons. But for us, it's like so much more than that we travel with Xhloe as a third member of our company, because his side of the storytelling and his role in the storytelling through lights, because the stage is empty, other than us in attire, the show is not the same without the way that he's decided to also tell his perspective through lights.
Yeah, I would agree from what I saw. Like, it's really beautiful, and the sound as well. So you all record yourselves, and how does that work as well?
When we write, we kind of have like slightly the director hat on as well, so we can write with like ideas in mind and things. But when we come to the space, it's very like explorative. But we take videos of ourselves and watch it back and things like that. We've known each other for so long now that like sometimes it's like feels almost like telepathy, where I don't even have to. I'll just be like, can you? And Chloe will be like, yeah. And then I'm like, 1, 2, 3, and we do it. And it's like and it works out like that.
Especially because, and the reason that we work together is that we have like super similar artistic sensibilities, that when we're writing something, we'll find out that we both do have the same like physicality in mind, or the same physical thing in mind. So then the blocking process becomes so efficient with each other that we can kind of say, we yada yada about this, I'm looking for some energy like this. A lot of the blocking of LBJ started as improv and as design, where we say, we know the script, we don't know where we're gonna move, but we know the tone we wanna hit, or maybe the moments we wanna hit, and then we see, and then we can watch the videos and lock it down. But we are really lucky that it's like, we've become a well-oiled machine, and we're always trying to improve that and improve like our communication between each other.
Yeah, because then there's the really funny moments where it's like,
when we don't,
where we're all completely on a different page, and it's just like, and sometimes we'll have to like sit for like 45 minutes to just be like, okay, what are you
because
talking about?
Because it's so rare, we don't expect it, and we'll be 30 minutes into a conversation and realize we're talking about two different moments of the show. So
yeah, like, it'll be like, I don't know what's going on.
And always funny and lighthearted, and I think the times that we disagree are some of the best choices come out of those. Absolutely. Because it calls you on it. Yes. I have this story that I always volunteer to tell because I was wrong. And then the rodeo burned down, which was our first Fringe show, so we kind of had never been to Fringe, and also we were kind of exploring with this new style of this like meta theatrical absurdity that we hadn't done yet. And so there was a line where I was trying to do something really clever that would call back to something, and Natasha's opinion was, it should just be the most random thing possible. The line included, like, we didn't even get to the tiny elephants, and we had not meant, there's no elephants in the show, there's no
elephants in a rodeo.
It just came out of nowhere, and I thought it was funny, but I just was like, oh, the artist in me was like, no, it should be something more solidly clever and sound with the themes of the show already. And Natasha really put her foot down and fought for the tiny elephants line. And so I conceded and was like, okay, I'll trust you on this one. And it's one of the biggest laugh lines of the entire show. I was wrong.
It's been in so many reviews. It's like, and so, but now it's like, anytime we get to a point in like the rehearsal process where like, I don't quite see what Chloe's talking about, and Chloe's like, this is my tiny elephants. And it's like, okay, I understand. I just have to trust it. And working with someone that you trust that much, I think, is part of it, where it's like, I trust Xhloe implicitly. Same with Xhloe. Like, I trust, like, even if I can't see the vision, I'm like, let's go with it.
Especially when it comes to lights, because we don't ever really get to truly see. Video is really not a good representation of lighting design. And so Natasha and I do a lot of switching, one of us on stage saying both of our lines and back and forth so that we can see at least how the lights land. Xhloe being the expert on that, maybe we say when we were writing this, we're picturing this like dark and deep red glow on whatever. And Xhloe will come in with an entirely different, he's like, I actually think it should be super bright coming from this place. Can you move this a couple feet over? And we might be like, that is not at all what we imagined. And then he's right, you know?
Yeah, exactly. It's really trusting each other. That's a massive part of this.
What an incredible process. And just a testament to you guys as an artist. So we were talking a little bit earlier about Fringe. A lot of people in New York, a lot of your friends are asking, how do I do Fringe? And so I know you're like, this is the advice that I'd want to give. What is the advice you would give other Fringers that are kind of starting out?
I would say a huge thing for success is the word that's tricky here. For being satisfied with your journey to Fringe is being clear with your goals going in. That I think when you have the money goal in mind, I'm gonna go to Fringe and I'm gonna make a ton of money, you can set yourself up for a lot of disappointment. But the same way goes with kind of our experience at Fringe is super uncommon. And so setting an expectation to sell out your first year, setting an expectation to win these awards, or you think about the flea bags and the baby reindeers, thinking that you're gonna go to your Fringe and then within the year you'll be on Netflix, setting your expectations that way. But also you can go to Fringe with the goal of touring opportunities, and you can go to the Fringe with the goal of just getting some reviews under your belt to then take back to where you're from, or the great goal of I want this as an achievement that I made it there. Mm-hmm. So I'm there to have the experience and to see things and to have people see my stuff, which was kind of our first year goal, was if we can just say we did that by ourselves, it would be mad cool.
It was interesting. We were as long as we can get there. That was the goal, was we just want to get there, and then we did. And it was awesome. It exceeded our expectations. But yeah, I would agree.
The Fringe advice that it is possible to do it yourself. It's a lot of work, and we don't need to tell anyone that. I think people are prepared for that, but that you can do the work, and all the crazy industry stuff of sending out the press releases and inviting industry and making your marketing materials and all of that good stuff. It's possible. The resources are out there. We're living in an age where it's so great, the amount of resources that we have at our fingertips, whether it's to get advice from other people or examples of what people who have gone before you have done. That start early.
Yeah, I mean, there's a quote that I heard the other day that is the good news is that you can do it yourself, and the bad news is that you have to. That was so true for us, where we're just I wish I was a nepotism baby. I so wish it, but we had to do it all ourselves, and there were nights where one of us was breaking down, and it's hard, but it is possible.
The other thing is that good work does speak for itself. Uh-huh. And obviously with the saturation of Fringe of good work, there is some of the best stuff you will ever see in your life at Edinburgh Fringe. Mm-hmm. And some stuff that's definitely not for you, and they're equally fun to see while you're there. But with the saturation of good work, you have to trust in the value of your work, because there's also a lot of politics at Fringe and a lot of hierarchies at Fringe, whether it's the venue you're at or how much money you put into marketing, or whether you flyer personally or you hire a flyer, or if you talk to your audience after or you don't. All the bells and whistles are great, and some of them help, and you'll learn what works best for your show and you as an artist. But that we've gotten comments about the venue. We stay at a small venue. We've been working with the Space UK every year that we've been at Fringe, and we really like it there, and we love the sense of community, and they've been really great to us. And so we don't necessarily feel like we need for our careers to be anywhere else right now. But we also were warned that we wouldn't get taken seriously by some of the larger publications at a small venue, that just small venues, the big publications go to big venues at Fringe, and it's not true that the work can speak for itself. Yeah, right. You can get those reviewers in, you can get those producers in. Like we said, all of our travels and our productions that we've had outside of Fringe have resulted from people coming to see us, and they come to see us regardless of the venue, the size, the length of the show. If it's a good show, it's a good show. So trust in your work.
That's gorgeous advice. Well, we're getting close to time, so I love to ask my guests this question. What has been your most interesting or awkward Fringe interaction? Just a fun, lighthearted story.
There was a show of A Letter to LBJ happening, and it was a big night. We had about seven reviewers in, and this was first Fringe, so we needed reviews, and we were
it was early in its life.
We didn't know what people thought about it yet and everything, and we were stressing out about it. But so it was a really big night for that reason, and the house was full, and the show was going so well, like one of our best shows.
Because it was new, we're still a little wobbly on our feet when we're showing it and learning when the laughs are and how to time it with the audience.
But they were with us.
It was great.
And so much they were with us that
we got to the end of the show. It ends on quite a somber note, and we were had just gotten over the kind of climactic moment of the show. The fire alarm starts going off in the venue, and at first I thought it was an ambulance going by, so I was praying for it to just pass and everyone could ignore it, and it keeps going, and it felt like ages. Nobody moves a
Nobody
muscle.
moves because they were so like in it with us, and nobody's moving. And Xhloe Rice Natash starts like going off with us,
And the lights start flashing, and Natasha turns. I freeze. Natasha's better in these moments than I am.
no, I just like turned to everyone and I was like, "You guys, I think that's the fire alarm." There was 30 seconds left of the show.
No.
joke.
90 seconds. So it's not even like just the last line and you can walk away and you'll still get you kind of get the wrap of the entire show. So everyone is being ushered out, including us. So the audience is shuffling down the stairs, and so are we, sweaty
together.
and in costume, and they're looking at us. Everyone's still kind of in a haze, including us, that like what we were just interrupted from was one of the most fast-paced and intense moments of the show. So we shuffle out onto the kind of courtyard outside, and just very naturally, the entire audience, nobody walks away. The entire audience stays and stands in a circle around us and just kind of like stares at us almost as if to say like, keep going,
Yeah,
you know?
they're like desperate to like hear the rest of
And
it.
so-
And at Fringe, like if you go over your time, like you're done. You can't go. There's another show coming in, and so we were like, I don't know if we can go back in, and I don't know.
And we were getting kind of the signal from the venue that it would be policy not to let us back in because our slot was technically over. We started explaining to the people, the audience, there's actually 90 seconds left of the show. Please, 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 if they let us, come back inside for the last 90 seconds. I know like you guys probably have other shows to see. Please come see the last 90 seconds. So then we stood for about 5 minutes out on this patio. We took pictures with them. We played a little harmonica because we had them in our hands. We took a video to be like, the fire alarm went off, we're out here. Very thankfully, somebody pulled a string for us and was like, quickly, everybody
They were
get
like,
back in.
Get back in. And
Every single person went back in.
Yeah,
And we ran in ahead of them. Everyone starts filing in. So everyone's filing back into their seats. We're running around the space. I climbed over into the tech booth because Angela was making sure the lights were back on and the work lights were off. I climb over and I start the sound cue that was going when the fire alarm went off, so that by the time Angela was ready, the song was like right at the perfect moment and it was approaching. The last person was sitting down. We went backstage, we looked at each other and we were like, get back in it.
because it's such a somber moment. And so Xhloe and I are backstage just like trying to like bring it down.
And then the music at the perfect time and the house lights go back down, people sit down, and we walk back out and pick up the show as if it hadn't stopped, and then it ended. And oh my God, it was amazing. Like, we got a standing ovation. The reviewers all wrote into their reviews that this had happened and that they loved that it happened.
It was one of my favorite reviews, was the Playbill review that was in that night. It was amazing.
Magic. Theater magic.
Theater magic.
And you can only get that live and in person.
Exactly.
It's the
True.
only place you can get an experience like
Support
that.
theater.
Exactly. Support local theater.
I love it. All right. Well, Xhloe, Natasha, thank you guys so much for being here today. It was such a delight to visit with you.
Thank you so much for having
This
us.
has been so much fun.
So cool.
Xhloe and Natasha will be performing all three of their award-winning shows, And Then the Rodeo Burned Down, What If They Ate the Baby, and A Letter to Lyndon B. Johnson or God, whoever reads this first, at the Space UK in Rep this summer at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival in August. So to learn more about this amazing duo, you can visit their website, Xhloe and Natasha. That will be linked in the show notes because Xhloe is spelled with an X. And then keep up with them on Instagram and TikTok and on X at Xhloe and Natasha. What the Fringe is produced and hosted by me, Lauren Hance. This episode was edited by Ben Ellis of Renowned Media and recorded here at Just Push Record Studios in Austin, Texas. And those sweet tunes you hear are provided by Paul Snyder of Orchestra of Sound, and our logo was designed by Ruby Arnold of Ruby Makes Things. What the Fringe can be found on your favorite podcast platforms and now on YouTube. Be sure to hit that subscribe button so you can stay in the know when new episodes release. And keep up with What the Fringe on Instagram at whatthefringe_productions, and find us online at whatthefringeproductions.com. Innovation is at the heart of Fringe, not just in our work, but how we reach our audiences. And while each of you are a special flower, remember, there is nothing new under the sun, and that new show idea you have, I am so sorry to break it to you.
There's a name for the thing that I've been doing, actually.